Hello, Charlotte. Thank you so much for joining me today. Would you take a couple minutes or moments to introduce yourself? Who's Charlotte?
Sure, yeah. I am Charlotte. I am a mom of two little girls. I am a yoga teacher as well as a therapist. I started teaching yoga in 2009, and I studied yoga therapy as well as yoga teaching, which really brought me to wanting to do psychotherapy.
Mhm. So I know, because I know you, that a lot of your counseling work is informed by your understanding of the mind-body connection from maybe from yoga or maybe from other experiences. Could you talk a little bit about that, of maybe how your previous experiences have informed your counseling practice?
Yeah, sure. So I work very somatically as a therapist, which means that I work with the understanding that the mind and body are not separate, that the mind and body are really one system, which is very much influenced from years of studying and practicing yoga. Um, I'm really interested in Eastern philosophies and looking at the ways in which the mind, body, spirit is one system that is also includes the planet that we live on. Um, and I find that this philosophy is such a beautiful counterpoint to the dualistic philosophy that we were all raised with, which says that I am separate. And that really has the effect of feeling like I am alone.
Mhm.
So, this aloneness can be a deeply frightening and traumatic way of experiencing and seeing the world. Whereas, as we practice yoga and we start to experience ourselves as an embodied being, as a part of a living system, there is a really embodied somatic experience of being connected.
There is so much I want to dig into with that. I'm going to start at a bit at the beginning of what you said. And you said that you're a somatic therapist, and that means that you believe the mind and body are connected. Tell
Mm.
me about that, because that is a unique way of doing therapy. Not everybody comes from that perspective, and it really shifts what therapy looks like. So, can you tell me a little bit about the somatic perspective and maybe how it informs or changes what therapy ends up being?
Yeah, so with somatic therapy, definitely seeing not just that the mind and body are connected, but that they are one system, that our body, our sensations, that the way that we take in and experience the world is our mind, is our body. It's not separate. Um, so in therapy, what that might look like is somebody tells me a story and I see that they're very much um, kind of disembodied. A lot of times people come in and it's I'm overwhelmed by these emotions. I won't let myself feel them. I don't want to be seen having them. It's sort of because the emotion happens in the body, right? So it's all sort of a denial of the body. Um, as we start to feel more comfortable in therapy, and one of the first things I usually say to people is all of that is welcome here. All of those parts of you are welcome here. There's a permission to start to move into the body because, oh, my sadness, where is that? It's in my throat. It's behind my eyes. Oh, my shame, it's in my belly. So we start to feel where those emotions are located in the body. And then we might start to feel how those specific emotions are embodied. And it might come up as a sensation or an impulse to move or an image or a memory. And as people start to understand where they're feeling that, where it came from, what it's connected to, there is such a deepened sense of embodiment and connection, and no longer kind of pushing away or refusing to see and feel what's there, but kind of embracing all of those parts of themselves.
The term dissociation is really coming up for me right now, where so many people dissociate their mind and their body, and they live in their head and they have no real connection to their experience of life, of things. And I'm doubling back to your point when you said that can feel so lonely and isolating because we're not even connected to the self. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's funny as you say that, because a lot of trainings and in a lot of therapeutic um, school and learning, dissociation is almost like this scary thing. But as you said that, I'm like, maybe, yeah, I think we all dissociate to some extent. I mean, just refusing to feel something or not noticing it, or the inability, I shouldn't even say refusing, like in a lot of ways we're trained out of, in childhood, trained out of feeling and noticing and experiencing the world through our bodies. So in a sense, dissociation happens quite naturally for a lot of people when something that feels alien, uncomfortable, frightening, an emotion, something that we're told you shouldn't feel this way, you shouldn't express that emotion, that can cause us to just dissociate from our self, our moment, our reality, our present, like what's really happening for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that normalization of dissociation that you're sharing, that it is super common and it's not this like taboo bad thing, that we all do it quite often, and we don't need to add shame on top of the experience of dissociation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me a little, if you are open to sharing a bit of an example. You're talking about we're going to move into the body, we're going to notice where that sadness sits, the impulses, what's happening in the body. What does that actually look like in a therapy session?
Mm-hmm. Um, it can look like a lot of things. Often I'll just really watch for people. As soon as there's an emotion coming up, I'll say, I see an emotion. And a lot of times we want to hide or cover, or kind of like, let's hop over it. When somebody says, I see an emotion, often that will bring it a little bit more to the surface and just legitimize and validate that it's there. And then I'll say, is it okay to look at that? Or is it okay to experience this? Or is it okay to bring this into session a little more fully? Because emotions are like clues as to what's happening in the body. So then people will say, yeah, I'm feeling it. And I'll say, where are you feeling it? Where are you feeling that emotion? And then they'll say where in their body. And we'll start to recognize, okay, well, what does it feel like? What are the physical sensations? Is it tightness? Is it heaviness? Is it a sinking feeling? Is it tingling? Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it have an image associated with it? So even just that practice, and that's something that people can do and start to do on their own, just having that awareness will create a deeper feeling of embodiment and acceptance of our emotional world.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, a lot of times the next question might be, okay, you're feeling this really strongly and it's coming up for you. Sometimes when it doesn't really make sense to you, you can't make sense of why it's coming up in this moment. But as you feel it in session, what does it remind you of? When have you felt this way before? What's the earliest you can remember feeling this way? If I ask somebody that without coming into the body, just cognitively, why did you get so upset? What is this triggering from your past? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The brain doesn't keep the score, the body keeps the score. So if I say, really feel it, really notice it, what does it remind you of? Oh my gosh, I used to have this feeling when I was 5 years old and my mother wouldn't look at me when I asked for her attention, right? Those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. So I'm really hearing that by moving into the body, we can have so much understanding of what's going on in the mind. Of I feel this way and I'm so upset, but I don't know why. It's the body that holds the answer and helps to guide us towards what we need to do and what healing has to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the body, um, it holds our memories, it holds our emotions, it holds the truth. It's really easy for us to kind of deny our experiences when we're not embodied.
Mm-hmm.
When you're embodied, when you're in your body, you can't say, well, you could say, no, I'm not feeling that. But if you're really paying attention, your body holds the truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you said it in a couple ways. You've said, the body keeps the score, the body holds the emotion, the body holds the truth. I feel like that a lot of people don't yet understand or really know what that means when we're saying like the body keeps the score. In your way of saying it, what does it mean that the body keeps the score?
Well, I think it's all of that, that the body holds our emotions. Our body also holds our memories. Our body holds our traumas. A lot of people have trauma, birth trauma, pre-verbal trauma, from before they could possibly remember or verbalize. And you can experience and heal and reprocess that trauma by noticing how it shows up in the body.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and traumas throughout our whole lifetime. It doesn't just have to be from that time period, but really through the body is the only way that we can process those traumas.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that might show up as, a feeling of fire in your belly that comes up when your child triggers you, or when your partner, you know, cancels last minute for something, or a friend. That might show up as often in therapy when people are doing deeper processing work, they'll start to rock,
Mm-hmm.
rock forward and backward or side to side. And, that's another way that the body keeps the score and heals, is by taking you back to that need that we have as children to be held and to be rocked.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can kind of get out of our own way, your body will instinctually know, okay, I need to rock right now.
I love that, Charlotte, what you just said. If we can get out of our own way, our body instinctually knows what we need. Tell me about what gets in the way of people doing
Um, I think the main thing that gets in the way of doing that is what we were talking about earlier with this dualistic society, with a society that says, overcome your body, overcome your emotions. Don't let that be seen. Don't express that. And we start to really internalize that method, that mentality, and to feel like showing this emotion would be weak, or allowing my body to do what it is wanting or needing to do. Often, when we're nervous, we want to shake, or when we're scared or sad, we want to cry or hide, right? So allowing the body to do the things that it wants to do is so sort of frowned upon in our society. So coming to therapy and allowing the body to do the things that it wants to do is tremendously healing.
that? As I hear you talk, I'm thinking about how we often see therapy as this process outside of society. Like I come in and I do the work because I am bad or broken or wrong, but it's about me, so I need to do the work. And as you're talking, I'm just thinking about how we respond and react the ways that we do because of what society has taught us and how they are interwoven. Just like the mind and the body, they're one and the same. We are one and the same with society. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that triggers a lot of ideas and thought processes for me. We were talking earlier about how the mind and body are not separate. Those things are one system, and those things are one part of a bigger system, which is our society, and our earth and our planet. And this is all a living system. So just like we might have ideas and thoughts that really influence our bodies, the culture around us, the ideas, the thoughts, the value systems, the myths, the narratives that a culture holds will be, held in every individual. So I think that we're deeply affected, culture is the water we swim in. We're deeply affected by the narratives of our culture. So if we live in a culture that says your body is somehow inferior to other bodies, or that says you're emotions are inferior to a more rational or emotionless way of being, it's easy to take that on. And it's also extremely damaging for us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's coming up for me just the intersectionality of all of these pieces, that as we're told to be capitalistic and work and earn and produce more, in order to do that, we are often taught to get rid of our emotions and push those aside. And so the intersectionality of, if I'm going to heal and allow my emotions to come up, I also have to question some of the systems that are at play in my world that tell me that this is who I am if I'm being my best self, or whatever language is being used.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I also have to relate it back to parenting, because we see it in our children and we experienced it as children ourselves all the time. The pressure that we feel that our children should be well behaved and should, there's only a certain, like, pretty narrow realm of what is acceptable behavior, places to express emotion, ways to express emotion. And probably most of us were raised in a way that said, it's not okay to show certain emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that happens with our children, there's such a instinct to say, oh, that's not okay, or a feeling of that's not okay. And it's really a breaking of cycles, a breaking of patterns, a breaking of these cultural narratives to say, yeah, I'm here with you and that's okay. And, maybe here's a safer or acceptable way to express it, or here's some tools to manage it, but all of that is okay.
Yes. I love how you talk about it as that breaking of cycles, that, you learned this because your parents learned that, who were taught this. And we just kind of unconsciously bring that forward until we get to a place where we're bringing awareness and saying, do I want to transfer this to my children? Does this continue with me? Or am I going to do the really hard work of figuring out what other alternatives are there?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard work, right? But I think that the good news is that I really see a lot of the solutions to these systemic and intergenerational traumas, problems, damaging narratives is the work of reconnecting and becoming embodied once again, and creating space for all of my emotional life, all of my traumatic experiences, taking away, as we do that, as we experience that in the body, it just naturally kind of takes away the shame, because it's like, oh, of course, of course I fought against this. Of course, this felt terrible. Of course, my body started to shut down in this way, or to lash out in this way, or to self harm, or the parts of myself started to be at war, and I started to feel this internalized struggle, right? And as we legitimize that and validate that, it really, like, removes the war.
Yeah. One system that I want to ask you about, as we're talking about just these different levels of systems, because we've had a number of conversations about kind of spirituality and counseling and how they're so interconnected, and I see that as another part of the systems that we're talking about. So I'm curious if you would speak to a little bit of your views on how the counseling and somatic process can actually be very spiritual in nature.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty amazing for me to see how spiritual this practice is for people and for myself. So again, as we think about the mind and body as one system, the mind body spirit, or the mind body soul, or there's a lot of different ways that we might speak about that, are really one system. And when we start to reintegrate that system, for a lot of people, they might have really different traumas, really different issues that bring them into counseling. But as people start to live in a more embodied way, I often see very similar experiences that I see as a very spiritual experience. So something that a lot of clients will say is like, as I go through this work and as I feel embodied and like my body is okay and I'm okay as I am, there's a sense of expansiveness. There is a sense of growth and expansion and groundedness, and a feeling that I'm not separate, that I am not alone, that I'm deeply connected and integrated in a living system, which includes our planet and all of the creatures that live here and all other beings. And that to me is at the heart of spirituality. And for some people that might include Jesus Christ, God. It might include whatever figures are in their particular religion. And if there is no religion, like there doesn't have to be for that to be a deeply embodied spiritual experience.
Wow, I love how you're sharing this, and I'm just thinking of the word connection is coming up for me, that as we connect to our entire being, the spirit, the soul, the body, the mind, we connect to community, the larger systems at play, we become just more and more connected. And I hear you as saying that there's that spiritual element for you. And for others who maybe don't use that language, for me, the language coming up is just connection, that there's a greater sense of connection to every being, everything on the earth, and not that isolation that you were mentioning at the beginning, that I'm alone and it's just me going through this.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, Cecile. The feeling of connection. I would say that is at the heart of how I view spirituality, is a feeling that we are connected.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much, Charlotte, for taking the time to talk about somatic experiencing, somatic work in general. I think it's such a underutilized form of therapy that is so effective, especially when it comes to trauma work. So I really appreciate you talking about it and what it can look like and what it can be.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for talking to me. It's really lovely for me.
Perfect. Let's stop the recording there.